Imagine discovering a jar of food sealed thousands of years ago. You open it expecting to find nothing but dust. Instead, you find something that still looks edible. Not a fossil, not a preserved fruit, not some mysterious chemical. Honey. A substance made by insects. It can remain preserved for astonishingly long periods when properly sealed.
And that sounds almost impossible.
How did humans discover that something produced by tiny flying insects
Could become one of the most valuable substances in the ancient world?
Because honey was never just food.
Kings wanted it.
Priests used it.
Warriors carried it.
Merchants traded it.
Ancient physicians used it in remedies. And civilizations built entire traditions around it.
But the strangest part of the story is that humans didn't invent honey. We didn't even teach the creatures that produce it how to make it.
Nature had already perfected it.
Humans simply discovered how to steal it. And that discovery may have begun with a moment of incredible danger. Imagine an ancient human standing beneath a tree. High above, hidden inside a hollow trunk, thousands of bees are moving around something they have spent their lives creating. Golden liquid. Sweet. Amazingly nutritious. But there is a problem. The moment that human reaches toward the nest, the entire colony can attack. One sting becomes dozens, then hundreds. For early humans, collecting honey was not a peaceful activity. It was a gamble, so why take the risk? Because before sugar became cheap and ordinary, sweetness was rare. Fruit existed. Dates existed. But concentrated sweetness was difficult to obtain. Honey was different. It was portable,
Energy-rich, naturally preserved,
and almost impossibly valuable for people living in a world where food could disappear with the changing seasons. But humans were not the first creatures to discover its value. Animals had been raiding bee colonies long before us. Bears, birds, small mammals. Even ancient primates likely learned that bee nests contained something worth the pain. And eventually, humans developed a better strategy.
Instead of simply attacking the colony,
they began learning how to approach it.
Smoke became one of the most important tools.
When bees encounter smoke, their behavior changes. Ancient honey hunters could use smoke to make colonies easier to approach, allowing them to collect honey with less danger. And somewhere along this long journey, humans realized something extraordinary. If bees could be encouraged to live near people, then honey didn't have to be found. It could be produced. That was the beginning of beekeeping.
But exactly when humans first began deliberately managing bees is difficult to determine.
The evidence is scattered across archaeology, ancient art, and surviving traditions. One of the earliest famous images comes from ancient Egypt. On temple and tomb walls, people were depicted working with bees and honey. The Egyptians did not merely eat honey.
They valued it deeply.
Honey appeared in religious offerings. It was used in food. It was associated with medicine. And beeswax became useful for practical purposes. But there was an even stranger connection. Honey was involved in the world of death. Ancient Egyptian burial practices sometimes used substances containing honey. And honey was valued. To the Egyptians, the tiny bee had become connected not only to life, but to the afterlife. And that tells us something important. Honey had already become more than a food.
It had become symbolic.
But Egypt was only the beginning.
Across the ancient Mediterranean, honey became deeply woven into culture.
They used honey as food, sweetener, and ingredient. In Greek writers discussed bees with remarkable fascination. Some ancient thinkers even wondered how bees organized themselves so efficiently.
And then honey entered a completely different
Medicine. Ancient physicians used honey in various preparations.
Its properties made it useful for treating wounds and other ailments. Thousands of years before modern microbiology,
Let it sit.
people had discovered through experience that honey could help preserve certain foods and could be useful on injuries. They didn't understand the chemistry. They didn't know about microorganisms. They simply noticed that it worked.
And this created a mystery that would remain unexplained for centuries.
Why did honey behave so differently from ordinary food?
Why could it resist spoilage?
Why did it remain stable when so many other natural foods quickly decayed? The answer was hiding inside the honey itself.
Its low water content,
Its acidity, and other chemical properties created an environment that many microorganisms struggle to survive in. But ancient people didn't know any of that. To them, honey seemed almost supernatural. And perhaps that is why bees themselves became symbols of something much larger. Order, industry, community, power. The bee worked constantly. It lived inside a highly organized colony. And rulers noticed.
in several ancient societies, bees became connected with royalty and political symbolism.
In ancient Egypt, the bee was associated with kingship and the title of the ruler of Lower Egypt. That tiny insect had become part of the language of power. But while kings admired bees, ordinary people were discovering something even more important. Honey could be traded.
Honey traveled across regions. Beeswax became valuable for candles, waterproofing, writing materials, cosmetics, and countless practical uses.
But then another discovery changed the story completely. Humans realized that beeswax could do something honey could not.
It could be shaped,
Melted, reused, and transformed into objects. This meant that a bee colony wasn't producing just one valuable substance, that it was producing two.
Honey, for sweetness and nourishment.
wax for technology. And suddenly, the importance of bees expanded far beyond the kitchen. Yet humanity still hadn't discovered the most powerful secret connected to these insects. Because honey was valuable, but the creatures making it were even more important. And eventually, humans would let without bees, the story of honey was only half the story. The real question was no longer, how can we collect more honey? What happens if the world loses the creatures that make it? That question would take the story of honey far beyond ancient kingdoms and straight into the modern world. For thousands of years, humans had looked at bees as producers of something precious. Honey fed people. Beeswax illuminated their homes. Bees appeared in symbols of kings and gods. But humans had misunderstood the real value of these tiny creatures. Honey was only one part of the greater secret was happening every time a bee left the hive. It was carrying something invisible from flower to flower, pollen.
And without this simple act, much of the food humans depend on would struggle to exist.
This transformed the story of honey completely. The bee was no longer simply an insect, making a sweet substance. It was one of nature's most important pollinators. But humans would need thousands of years to fully understand what that meant. Long before modern science, people were already moving bees around. As agriculture expanded, beekeepers learned to place hives near flowering plants and crops. Different civilizations developed their own methods. The ancient world had already discovered that bees could be managed, but the relationship between humans and bees was about to become far more sophisticated. In medieval Europe, beekeeping became an important rural activity. Honey was especially valuable because refined sugar was still expensive and unavailable to most ordinary people. A spoonful of honey could transform otherwise bland food. It could sweeten drinks, preserve certain foods, and provide concentrated energy. But honey had another advantage. It did not depend on a distant tropical plantation. It could be produced locally. A small community with enough flowering plants could maintain its own source of sweetness. That mattered enormously in a world where transporting food was difficult. Yet there was a problem. Honey production depended on something humans could not completely control. The weather. A cold spring could reduce flowering. Drought could destroy plants. Rain could interfere with bee activity. A harsh winter could weaken colonies. So even the most skilled beekeeper could never fully command the harvest. Nature always had the final word. Then the world changed. Sugar became increasingly important. As European powers expanded overseas, sugar plantations grew across tropical regions. Sugar began transforming from a rare luxury into a major global commodity. And suddenly, honey had a powerful competitor. Sugar could be produced on a massive scale.
It could be transported long distances. It could be stored. And unlike honey, its production could be expanded through enormous plantations. The age of industrial sweetness had begun. But something unexpected happened. Honey didn't disappear. Instead, it changed its identity. For thousands of years, honey had been the ordinary person's major source of concentrated sweetness. Now sugar increasingly filled that role. Honey gradually became associated more strongly with natural food, tradition, medicine, and craftsmanship. And the bee itself became even more important. Because modern agriculture was becoming dependent on crops that required pollination.
Fruit trees, vegetables, seeds, nuts.
The invisible work performed by insects became essential to the food system.
But nobody could see the full scale of the problem.
Until scientists began studying bees more closely.
Inside a hive was an extraordinary society. Thousands of individuals working together. Different roles, complex communication, temperature control, food storage, defense, and perhaps most astonishing of all, the bees could communicate the location of food. A worker returning to the hive could perform movements that conveyed information to other bees. The famous waggle dance, studied scientifically by Carl von Frisch, revealed that bees could communicate the direction and approximate distance of food sources.
Think about what that means.
A creature with a brain tiny enough to fit inside your fingernail was capable of communicating information about a location beyond the hive. For centuries, humans had wondered how bees seemed to know where flowers were. Now science was beginning to uncover the answer.
But understanding bees also revealed how vulnerable they were.
Modern beekeeping became increasingly sophisticated. Hives could be inspected. Colonies could be transported. Queens could be managed. Honey could be harvested efficiently. The relationship between humans and bees became an industry.
But the larger agriculture became, the greater the pressure on pollinators.
Habitat loss reduced wildflowers. Pesticides could harm insects.
Parasites and diseases could weaken colonies.
Climate changes could alter flowering seasons. And suddenly, the ancient question returned in a completely modern form.
What happens if the bees The answer is not that humanity would suddenly lose all its food. But
that idea is too simple.
Many major crops do not depend on bees for pollination.
But numerous fruits, vegetables, nuts, and other plants benefit enormously from insect pollination. The consequences of widespread pollinator decline could therefore be serious. The tiny insect, once admired by ancient kings, had become connected to modern food security. And that makes honey's history strangely circular. Thousands of years ago, humans looked at a bee colony and saw a source of sweetness. Today, we look at the same creature
and see something much larger. An essential part of the natural system supporting agriculture. But perhaps the most fascinating thing about honey is that its story has survived almost every transformation humanity has experienced. Empires rose, empires collapsed. Trade routes shifted, religions spread. Cities disappeared. Technology transformed the world. And still, somewhere, bees continued doing almost exactly what they had always done. Collecting nectar. Returning to the hive.
A substance that humans once regarded almost as a gift from the gods became a global product sold in supermarkets.
Building wax. Feeding the colony. Creating honey. A substance that humans once regarded almost as a gift from the gods became a global product sold in supermarkets. Yet its basic creation remains astonishingly ancient. A flower produces nectar. A bee, the colony transforms it. Water is removed, the chemistry changes, and eventually, a golden substance is sealed inside wax. It is difficult to imagine a better example of nature turning something temporary into something remarkably durable. The flower blooms for a short time. The bee lives only a limited life. But the honey remains. And perhaps that is why honey has fascinated humanity for so long. It reminds us that nature does not need machines to create complexity. It does not need factories to build valuable products. And it does not need humans to understand what it is doing. For thousands of years, we thought we were the ones using the bees.
But the deeper we look, the more complicated the relationship becomes.
We need them. They need flowering ecosystems. And those ecosystems are connected to the food on our tables. So the next time you see a jar of honey, it may be worth seeing something more than sweetness.
Inside that jar is the result of thousands of tiny journeys. Thousands of flowers. Countless movements of wings.
An ancient relationship between insects, plants, and humans. A relationship that survived kingdoms, outlived empires, and continues today. Because perhaps honey's greatest secret was never that it could last for so long. It was that something so small could become part of something so enormous. Yet its work has shaped agriculture for thousands of years. And maybe that is the final lesson, hidden inside nature's sweetest gift. History is not. Sometimes, it begins with something small enough to fit inside your hand.